sometimes voters are asking for something that goes against the establishment. That's what they were asking for when they voted for Jesse Jackson. Honestly, that's what they were asking for when they voted for Donald Trump.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will survive.
Jesse Jackson and the fight for Black political power. She is here. Abby Phillip. Abby D. Phillip, welcome to the Karen Hunter Show. Hi.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming in. I'll introduce you to Drew McCaskill, my partner in power today.
Hey, Drew, how are you?
Hey, Abby.
Hi.
So I know you started this book journey in the pandemic, right, during the pandemic. It started with a visit to sit with Jesse Jackson, and it turned into this. Why was this story important to tell?
Yeah, I mean, as a political journalist, I think that this story is kind of an origin story of some of the big political themes of our time right now. I mean, I think that one of the things that I wanted to uncover in revisiting this time period is, did we really understand what Jesse Jackson did and what he represented when he ran in the 80s? And I think some of it we did, but I don't think that many people recognized how lasting his impact was, how it's still relevant today in terms of what kind of political messages Democrats might be turning to, as they are, I think, right now, what might be necessary in order to have a political system, a democracy that responds to the fact that this is a diverse country. And I think Jesse Jackson's campaigns have a lot of those lessons. And I think this was a book that was not just about the past; it was also about the present, and also about the future as well.
Yeah, the tie-in. There's no Barack Obama without Jesse Jackson.
Yeah.
There's no Jesse Jackson without Fannie Lou Hamer. There's no, the genealogy is super important for us.
Yeah,
But he
yeah.
he was able to build a coalition that hadn't been done. You mentioned Shirley Chisholm and why she was not as successful, because she did not have that strong coalition. And in many ways, Jesse Jackson. I was sharing with the audience yesterday. I voted for the first time in a primary for a Black man. And I was on a campus in Madison, New Jersey, went to vote, and there were not a lot of Black people in this town at all, but I was so super excited to cast a vote because it was, my very first voting experience was Jesse Jackson in the primary in 1984. And it was,
Yeah.
I felt a sense of pride, and I was wildly optimistic that he might actually make it. I don't know what,
Yeah, and
but that's
well,
18-year-olds.
you know what, Karen, I feel like that story, I have heard so many different versions of that. There is a whole generation of Americans, Black Americans in particular, for whom Jesse Jackson was their very first political experience. It was the first time that they got engaged. It was the first time that a candidate really reached them. And honestly, it's almost irrespective of race. I mean, I think it was important for Black people, but I've heard that from white people too, and Asian people, and people of all different stripes, because what he did was actually speak to young people like you were in 1984. He would go to college campuses. It was the same kind of like Bernie Sanders, AOC energy, Zoran Mamdani energy. He was going to the young people and riling them up and bringing them into the political process. And that's actually a big part of the story, was that he there are these politicians that understand how to get at people who are politically disengaged, or might be politically disengaged because maybe they're young and they've never engaged in the system before. And he was one of those politicians who got an entire generation of young people to say, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to work for a campaign, whether or not the establishment believes that this candidate can win. And honestly, why would you not believe that he could win?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, I
no
mean,
good reason to not believe
no,
that.
I mean
Yeah.
it was Reagan. It's like, yeah, that was easy. That was easy. Abby Phil, you weren't even born when that happened. You know,
No.
so why are you in this? What was it about this story that brought? Because again, you didn't have the experience.
Yeah.
You met Jesse Jackson while he's not really Jesse Jackson still. You know,
Yes, yes.
he's
Yeah.
it not that man. So what was it about this story that a whole book was produced from?
Yeah. Well, I first of all, I actually appreciated that I could come to it with kind of fresh eyes in a way that I didn't have a lot of preconceived notions. I didn't come to the story with sort of personal ties. And I actually think that was an advantage because
Yeah.
it allowed me to really kind of explore it journalistically, to really talk to people and to reflect what I think is pretty accurately who he is, what he did, all facets of it, the good and the bad. But I also wrote it for a lot of people like me who weren't there.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people in my generation, my sort of coming of age was the Obama era. And there are a lot of people in my generation who think that was the beginning of the story. And it's obviously not the beginning of the story. And I do think that no judgment at all, no shade, it's important to understand that there is a predicate for the things that we are experiencing right now. And on top of that, I mean, there are even more young people who think that Bernie Sanders is the first and only. And the truth is, as Bernie Sanders told me, he was picking up where Jesse Jackson left off. So that's just important to know because I also think that our history should reflect reality. It shouldn't just reflect um, what we want to remember. It should reflect what actually happened. And I did feel like this was a chapter that risked being lost to history, especially given so many of these people, Reverend Jackson is still with us, but so many of his aides are not. All of the people
Yeah,
who were there.
yeah,
Now is the time to actually get their stories and to write them down and to memorialize them for the future.
yeah. Like
What did you
Ron
find?
Walters. Okay, go ahead, Drew. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say, what did you find that was more surprising about? Because there's a Jesse Jackson fact sheet. If you look for it, you can find it. Right, all the things he got the
Yeah.
hostages back. He ran for president. All of those things. But what did you find that was sort of hidden in the stories within the stories that was most interesting to you about the human and the history of Jesse Jackson?
Yeah, I think that one of the hidden stories in these campaigns is actually the way that his campaign was far more broad-based than the media made it out to be.
Yeah,
He spent a lot of time in both campaigns and between the campaigns, really trying to reach out to white America,
yeah,
going to farms and rallying with small town family farmers whose farms were being foreclosed on. He had a campaign that was actually trying to do what his slogan was, which is build a rainbow coalition. And it wasn't just Black people and white people. He brought Asian Americans into the political
yeah.
process. He brought Arab Americans into the political process. There were so many groups of people in this country who had never been spoken to by our political process before Jesse Jackson really directly started engaging with them and saying, not only do I want your vote, but I actually am going to represent you. I'm going to be a voice for you at the national convention. This is true of LGBTQ people
Yeah,
as
I
well.
was gonna say.
He was the
Dude,
first, major party candidate to even mention gay people at a convention. He rallied at
wrote a whole
an HIV.
op-ed to the gay
Yeah,
community about
yeah,
who he was going to be as a leader for all
yeah.
people.
So I think that not only was that, I think, made very clear when I was really digging into the research and interviewing people, but when I went back and I was reading the clips of newspaper articles that were written about Jesse Jackson, they make very little mention of this.
Yeah.
It is almost not talked about in the contemporaneous accounts of these campaigns. And again, that's another reason why this history is so important because sometimes the story that is told at the time is not all that complete and not all that accurate. And it's important to go back and actually dig a little bit deeper.
Whose responsibility is it because we keep seeing history rhyming, where the stories aren't being told, or narratives. We were talking earlier about the propaganda around Zoran Mondani, and how the Muslim thing, and it's like the media though is complicit, right? They are
Mm.
carrying a narrative. Is it their responsibility to make sure that people are covered fairly?
In a perfect world, yes. But obviously, we're dealing with human beings all around, right? And so I think that there are obviously biases that come with covering politics, and I've experienced it myself, you know. I mean, I think that there is a bias toward the familiar and a bias toward the establishment. And whenever there are figures who push against that, the system kind of doesn't know what to do with them. They just want to keep reverting back to what's familiar, what they know. And so that's true of the political system, the parties, the major parties, Democrat and Republican, and it's also true of the media. And it's not just, by the way, true of Zoran Mamdani and Jesse Jackson. It's also true of Donald Trump. We in the media missed the Donald Trump story until it happened. And so I think that some of that is because when we see candidates who look different, sound different, don't do things the way typical candidates do, it really throws off the kind of carefully crafted practice that I think a lot of journalists are in. And one of the things that should be done more often is that there needs to be more of a willingness to just actually have open eyes about some of these figures and
Yeah,
think for
yeah.
a second that maybe actually everything that we know about politics, sometimes maybe it doesn't apply when people are pushing against the norm. And I think that's important. You know, I was covering Tuesday night's primary in New York, and I think that, look, a lot of people would have said that it was impossible for a Democratic socialist to be elected mayor of New York City, but guess what? He was. And what that should tell us is that sometimes voters are asking for something that goes against the establishment. That's what they were asking for when they voted for Jesse Jackson. Honestly, that's what they were asking for when they voted for Donald Trump. And when that happens, the media is slow to respond, but we need to be quicker to respond to that
Yeah.
and to just, without judgment, take it for what it is and reflect what people are actually saying out there in the country.
Well,
And take it seriously whether you like it or not, or whether you
100%.
respect
well,
that opinion
You don't need to
juxtaposed
endorse
to your
it.
own. Yeah.
well,
You don't need,
I think
it's just people, if that's what people are saying, we should just reflect that, because that's
well
the
that
best sense of what's happening in the country.
We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless. This is not the time to be afraid. This is a time to stand up and fight back and to resist any temptation for them to divide us. We're in this together. The rule of law is on our side. We will not give in, not give up. We will not capitulate. We will not bow. We will not bend. We will